Hello, everybody. You're here with Edgar.
And Bridgetta.
And you're listening to Pillow Talk Unplugged.
And if you guys don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I am super excited for our special guest today. We're going to talk about all things sex astrology, what it's like to be with them in bed, compatibility-wise, get real and juicy. We have Solaris here. I've actually known her for years, and she's also my personal astrologer. I think you're on my payroll pretty much. But I'm all the time hey, I got another question. I got this. And she's been so accurate. It's been amazing. That's hence me working with her forever. But she's the perfect person to talk about and dive deep into sextrology. So I'm going to let you just kind of take it from here. And yeah. So
hi, guys. Yes, happy to be your sextrologist. I really love love and relationships. It's my favorite thing to help people with astrology. And there's just so much that you can see in an astrology chart. You can see somebody's sexuality. You can see if they're bisexual, if they're gay, if they're lesbian, if they're straight. You can see, different signs, their compatibility, who you would be compatible with in bed. And when you look at an astrology chart, you can actually see if you guys would have good sexual chemistry before you guys even meet in person.
Love it.
So that's really helpful to do if you're swiping on Tinder or Bumble or something, or if you're, you met somebody out and about and you want to know their birthday and you want to know if you're compatible. So basically the biggest way to do that, if you look at an ephemeris and you bring up your chart, is you want to look at where your Venus is and you want to look at where your Mars is. And then you compare it to the person that you like, their Venus and Mars. And you want them to have a connection. So you compare your Venus to their Mars and then your Venus to their Mars. So basically you're cross comparing. And then you also want to see Venus to each other's Plutos, because that would mean that it's a grand passion or a grand love. Oh. So it's something that you kind of have to do, if you know astrology a little bit more in depth, or if you know how to look at your chart. But, there's a lot of apps on the phone nowadays that you can use to pull it up. I think there's CoStar, I think is the big one for iPhone. And then there's a couple of other ones that you can do for your phone or your software. You can go to even astro.com.
Yeah.
So you want to look at where the signs are. So signs that are really good is if your Venus and their Mars, which you can look up, on your apps, or if they're trined. So that would mean if they're the same element. So if your sign, your Venus is a water sign and
Mine's
their Mars is a
Scorpio.
water sign, or their Venus is a fire sign and their Mars is a fire sign, that means that you guys have a sexual trine, and that means it's very, very compatible. If you have it as a square, that's also really compatible. And then if you have it as an opposition or a conjunct when it's the same sign. So there's a lot of nerdy little in detail things, but I was thinking we could start to use an example if you want.
Sure. That would be fun.
Absolutely.
I don't know who I would put an example with. But
I don't know. Do you guys want to see if you guys would have good sex?
oh my
Sure.
gosh.
Why not? Absolutely.
Go for it.
I have a question. So in terms of its birth date, but also location of birth and even time of birth is what you have to look at, right? Because there's a certain element of precision that I've noticed on CoStar. I've seen that, and also another app called The Pattern, which we'll talk about another time. But it was very specific. And I remember when I first signed up on it, I had to actually ask my mom, when was I born, time-wise in the day, and even she wasn't exactly sure. No, she gave me a range of
That's
between
exactly right.
7 and 8 a.m.
The time of day will give you your rising sign. And then the location in the world, it'll affect kind of a little bit of the degree of the moon. So yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Well, I know my Venus is in Scorpio, but I don't know where my Mars is. Yeah.
So, okay, when somebody's Venus is in Scorpio, if you guys listening have your Venus in Scorpio, that's probably one of the best sexual signs. Scorpio has a bad reputation in the best way. And you basically will have the way that you love. And the Venus is all about love. So the way that you love is very sexy. It's very passionate. And so people talk about something called demisexual, where if you find somebody, you are more attracted to them the more that you gain an emotional connection with them. So Bridgetta, you, with your Venus in Scorpio, you might find yourself really being attracted to people once you develop that emotional connection. But then you can go really, I want to use the word deep, but no pun intended. You basically can really, really connect passionately with somebody. So your Venus in Scorpio is a very passionate placement for it.
Okay, well now I want to know where my Mars is, and then we have to figure out what yours is. So
I have no idea where they are. I just know my normal sign and then
wait, but I'm
date
sure
of birth.
Let
and all that.
me
she's gonna plug it
find
in.
you. I have a million thousand thousand charts, but what we'll do is I'll just put it in again, and then we will see where that is. So I'll just put that in. Do you want to tell me your birthday on here?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
6/27/1985.
Sorry, what? Oh, yes. You want yours now? You're very excited.
I'm very curious. So it's June 27th, 1985. Birth location is Moscow, Russia, and time of birth is between 7 and 8 a.m.
So Russia, 7 and 8 a.m. Okay, so I'll just put you at 7:30 a.m.
works.
And Edgar, what is your last name?
White, like the color.
Right. Excellent. So I have your chart, and I can even do a screen share since you guys are looking at my video.
Yes,
and I'll
that'd be
show
great.
Yeah.
Love to see it.
you Bridgetta. Excellent. And then Bridgetta, your birthday again.
Christmas Day, 78. And I'm born 12:07 a.m.
Down to the minute.
Yes.
I like the precision. Okay.
Yes. And what city?
Baltimore. Go Ravens. Just kidding.
Second that.
Yes. Okay. Let's see here.
Well, this will be interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Grab a
So
drink.
let's see if I can screen share. Am I allowed to screen share? Yes, I am. Okay. If I do this. All right. So basically, do that. And then we'll let that stuff go. Can you see this or no?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. So basically, this is Edgar's astrology chart, and this is Brigetta's astrology chart. So, yes, Venus. Okay, so yes, so your Venus, Bridgetta, this Venus looks like this little symbol here, and Edgar's Mars. Oh, very, very good sexual compatibility, actually. Edgar, your Mars is in Cancer. So
That's my main
this is actually
sign.
very good. So yes, that is your sun sign as well.
Oh, sun.
So the Mars looks like this symbol here, this red symbol, and then Venus looks like this blue symbol right there. So what this does is when somebody's Venus is in a water sign like Bridgetta and Edgar's Mars is in a water sign, that is a sexual trine. So that is very, very compatible. So I love that so much. And then your Venus, Edgar, is, let's see, in Taurus, and Bridgetta, that means your Mars is in Capricorn. So Taurus and Capricorn, those are two earth signs, which are again a trine. So you have a double sexual trine. So honestly,
Keeps
your
getting
compatibility sexually is very, very strong. And then let's see, Bridgetta, your Pluto should be Libra. Let's see, because it's generational. Is your Pluto? Yes. Okay. So your Pluto is here. It looks like this little guy with his hands up, and it's in Libra. And then Edgar, your Pluto should be Libra too. Oh no, you moved into Scorpio because you're a baby. Okay, so that means that yes. Okay, so then Brigetta's Venus in Scorpio is immediately on Edgar's Pluto in Scorpio. So that is what a conjunct is. So when you have the two signs the same, so Scorpio, Scorpio, that's conjunct. That means they're like right on top of each other, like they're spooning. So basically, it's very, very good because that means it's a grand passion, and sometimes they label it a grand obsession. So that would also add to the sexual chemistry there, which is very good. And then Edgar's Venus in Taurus and Brigetta's Pluto in Libra don't have an aspect. So you can tell if something doesn't have an aspect if it's not trined, which is in the same element, if it's not squared, which is a 90-degree angle, which you kind of have to memorize that one. If it's not conjunct, which is the same sign, or opposition, which are opposite signs. Like you guys are opposite signs for your sun sign, where Bridgetta is a Capricorn and Edgar's the opposite, which is Cancer. So if your Venus-Pluto were opposite, then that would be an aspect. But you don't have an aspect there, but you already basically have two strong sexual connections, and you have the Pluto-Venus conjunction, which is also very, very strong. The next thing you do to look at sexual compatibility, or what I would do, is you look at the 8th house. So Edgar, what you were talking about, a rising sign. So when you can determine your time of day, you can determine your rising sign. So Edgar, you are a Leo rising. Bridgetta, you are a Libra rising. And so you look at the rising sign, which is always at the 9 o'clock position on an astrology chart. And then what you do is you go count the houses around counterclockwise. So you start at the Leo, and that's 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So each one of these little sections of the pie chart is a house. And so when you look at the 8th one, this is a section of sex. So for Edgar, you have Venus and Aquarius here. Bridgetta, you have Aries and Taurus here. I'll move you a little out. There you go. So yes. So then you want to see, does this person have planets in the other person's house of sex? And so for Bridgetta, you have Aries, Taurus. So does Edgar have any Aries planets? No. And then for you, do you, Bridgetta, have any Pisces, Aquarius planets in you? And you don't, but you have some asteroids. So you have these 3 little guys down here. You have Juno, which is a marriage planet. You have this question mark, which I'm blanking. And then you have Vesta, which is for home and like feeling comfortable. So you have some asteroids there. So I would say asteroids are less than planets. They're minor, but people look at asteroids as affecting people from time to time in little minor ways. So I would say you have a couple little asteroids there. So it doesn't hurt. It spices it up a little bit, but you already have a ton of spiciness in your charts. So I would say sextrology approved.
Got it. All right.
All right.
So that's kind of a little bit about how you would look at a chart, and you would see somebody's sexual compatibility if you take 2 victims.
Now, you mentioned for Bridgetta a little bit of her character as kind of, in a romantic situation based on, I think that was the Venus,
Scorpio.
Venus position. What about mine? I'm curious what you can tell me about what I am like as a lover.
Ooh, what you're like as a lover.
Yes.
Well, Cancers are my favorite because but I'm Scorpio. So basically, whenever you find somebody who is your own element, there's a natural compatibility there. Mm-hmm. So basically, for you being a Cancer, like other water signs are very compatible with you just naturally and easily. So for you as a lover, I would actually say that you're more sexual than the average Cancer. And the reason why I'm saying that is because with your sun sign being in Cancer, it's what you mentioned a little earlier today, your Mars also being in Cancer. So Mars is a masculine planet. It's a planet of sex. It's passion. It's physical energy. It's where you direct all of your chi, like where you direct all of your passion and force. And so when you have the Mars, you have it for you, in your case, on your sun sign. So that means that all of your like sexual energy is on your sun, your sense of self, who you are. And so that means they're conjunct together, close together. And so imagine planets like magnets. When you have 2 magnets close together, they're going to attract really quickly. If you have magnets too far apart, the force is weak and they don't really come together. Right. So in an astrology chart, when you have your sun and Mars so close together like this, it's like they're amplifying the qualities of these 2 energies. And so basically for you, you're more passionate and more sexual than the average Cancer. Cancers normally as lovers are like very sensual, very cuddly, very like, they're the ones that will like cuddle in bed with you till like, noon. And it's great. Your show is called Pillow Talk. They're the ones that will like talk with you until like late hours and like give you massages and kiss your feet. Like they're super like doting. They're nurturing. They're the mommies of the zodiac. So they're like gonna like give you so much like affection and, they'll hold your hand and stuff like that. So I would say that like as a Cancer, you're a very tender lover, but with that Sun Mars conjunct, you can be very fiery. So it adds a little bit more.
Pretty like, good. I'm quite impressed because it's you don't really know anything about me other than this, and I think it's pretty spot on. I mean, from my own personal experience and the feedback, let's say, that I've received.
The feedback of the ladies.
The feedback of the ladies, yeah. But that's those 2 aspects, like the passionate part and also the very kind of tender, sensual side. That's definitely always been me. So it's kind of pretty fascinating. I mean, I've kind of gotten more into the astrology of relationships probably over the last few years, especially noticing how certain people definitely act like what their astrology charts suggest in terms of personality. But I obviously haven't been involved in it as long as you have, Bridgetta, and certainly as you. But it is almost shocking to me, coming from a kind of very scientific background, just how accurate this stuff really ends up being.
Yeah.
And it's like this hidden code of the universe, that we're decoding piece by piece.
And it's so funny because so many scientists are all like, oh, astrology is not real. It's a pseudoscience. But then, you can look at all of these facts where you can look at where your planets are and the astronomy and everything, and you can plan that map and you can chart it and you can see all the aspects and you can plan stuff and predict stuff to the day. You can know somebody's personality with never meeting them. And it's like, how can that be fake? If you can discover all this stuff and accurately predict the day, when things happen, when you go in detail to specific charts, it can't be fake. It's just that people read magazine horoscopes and they think they're inaccurate because they're so generalized.
Right.
But like when you do it for real and you go very specific, you can predict stuff with such precision.
Okay.
But talking about your sexuality, Edgar, what's interesting is when I look at your past life planet, and so basically in your astrology chart, you have something called a south node. It's this little upside down horseshoe here. And for you, you have it in Scorpio. So the south node talks about qualities of like who you were in a past life and themes that you've mastered and, gifts that you have and talents because you've cultivated them already. And so with you being a past life Scorpio, you are somebody who is like very passionate. It says in actually past lives that you would have mastered sex because qualities of Scorpio are sex and sexuality and power and spirituality and psychic abilities and mediumship. So for you, adding to your sexual, prowess as a Cancer with your Sun Mars conjunct, you also have that past life Scorpio energy, which is very passionate. So that's good. And then a little extra fact for you two victims, Venus, Brigetta's moon, her emotions and her heart in Scorpio, and her Venus in Scorpio is right on your past life planet, Edgar. So there's a little past life love action going on for you guys. But you definitely have mastered sex in a past life, so it adds to your little spiciness as well.
Actually, that's funny because the pattern said that.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Ooh, I like the pattern. Good vibe.
Maybe I was a Kama Sutra instructor in India in a past life or something
Maybe
like that.
so.
You could have been. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Very fascinating. Okay, so what I think will be fun too is to kind of maybe go through other Venus signs, like quick, if someone has, the listeners out there, they've got their Venus in blank, what does that mean for them?
Yes. Okay, so we'll start with the top. So Aries is the first sign. And if your Venus is in Aries, it basically means you like to chase. You like to be the dominant one in the relationship. And you really get attracted to somebody who's maybe a little unavailable. So when you conquer them, it gets extra exciting for you. When it comes to sex, you look at the Mars. So if your Mars is in Aries, you would be the aggressor in bed, and you would definitely be more dominant. If your Venus is in, and your sex would be more physical. It wouldn't be normally like the missionary placement. You would try all the positions, or maybe you would have sex outside on a hike or something. Like you would have more physical energy sex because Aries is more like physical energy. Venus is more sensual though in Taurus. And so if your Venus is in Taurus, it would be like you guys could do food play. You guys could do sex when it comes to, physical pleasures. It's more artsy. It's more, you can put music playlist on when you have sex. It's more sensual and you create more like a mood. You also might want to have sex or love if your Venus or Mars is in Taurus, is you might want to just like be more comfortable. That would be like you want to have sex at home and like at the foot of the bed would be a little sexy for you. So it would be a little more like sensual, a little more homebody. You would be a little more earthy with it. So it would be that. But Taurus, Mars actually are usually pretty faithful. So Taurus are usually very committed and traditional. And so when your Mars is in Taurus, you can be pretty faithful. So if you're looking for somebody who won't cheat on you, you should look for someone with a Mars in Taurus. Mars and Gemini, though, however, they will probably cheat on you because Mars and Gemini is all over the place. It's very like multiple lovers. And if your Venus or Mars are in Gemini, you could be bisexual, or you could like the same gender. So Gemini is a sign of the twin or more than one. So you would find that you would actually maybe like more than one gender, or you could have more than one partner. Venus and Mars in Gemini could also be polyamory. So you might find yourself with either multiple people, you might always have a roster of people, or you might actually find yourself in polyamorous relationships. Because I would say commitment could be a little trickier for you, or you would want to have sex with like many people, sometimes even at once, group sex. With Cancer, so Venus in Cancer would be, or in Edgar's case, Mars in Cancer. Again, it's very sensual, so we talked about that. It's very loving. Also, Venus in Cancer people might get or stay very attached to like their childhood sweethearts or lovers from the past. It's a very nostalgic, sentimental energy as well. So there's a little bit of that added energy, but Mars and Cancer are usually pretty faithful. So that's pretty good. Moving on to Leo. If your Venus or Mars is in Leo, you are showy, you are an exhibitionist. You are probably pretty goofy and fun with your sex. I would say you are the ones that do grand romantic gestures. You're very passionate. You are not one to be silenced. You're probably screamers, and you don't mind showing off in front of others. And also physical sex, because Mars in Leo can be also very like physically active. So there might be that. And Venus in Leo could be very like glittery and dazzling, kind of, you don't mind being the king or the queen in the bedroom and being worshipped. And can be pretty dominant in the bedroom. Leos can be pretty dominant. Virgos are a little less sexual. You might find if your Venus or Mars is in Virgo that you're a little more restricted, or you might find that you're pretty picky or selective to who your partners are. You might find that you're very traditional in bed and you may not be too adventurous or take a lot of risks. You might also sometimes have sexual anxiety. But the good parts of Venus in Virgo is you are super faithful, or Mars in Virgo is very faithful. You would find yourselves being very loyal to the person. And you might also have very few sexual partners because you're very selective. But when you do get close to somebody, you can experiment with them if you like really trust them and they know you and you know that you formed that bond and that commitment. And they're usually pretty faithful, which is good. For Venus or Mars in Libra, that's another maybe bisexual sign, or pansexual, multisexual. That is very, very pretty, beautiful, beautiful. You are the ones that love to dress up, meaning like you would do the lingerie, like full set. You would find yourself all glammed up for sex. You would find yourself wanting to do it in beautiful places. You would light the candles. You would make your place beautiful, or maybe a sexy hotel room. You know, for you, physical beauty is very much the turn on. And so making it aesthetically beautiful is one of your motives. Mars in Libra is a little less faithful, a little less committed, a little poly. So Libra and Gemini have similar qualities, except that Libra is more like pretty. Your partners, you might be selective about like their looks. You might be a little elitist with like, oh, you want to only date models, you know, like, so you would maybe date people that are that, or you're the ones that would want to like make love. You're the ones that would be very highly romantic or high romance into your sex life. So for you, it may be like you want to have this like romanticized version of sex. When Venus is exalted in the sign of Libra and Taurus. So those are actually very good placements to have your Venus. And Mars is exalted in Aries. So that's a great placement to have your Mars. So exalted means the best place you can have it. Scorpio Venus, which we talked about with Bridgetta, very sexy, very passionate, very kinky. You would be anybody's sexual fantasy. You'll do anything they want. You would have boundaries, of course, but like you could morph yourself into whatever that person wants. Mars in Scorpio, Mars in Scorpio is the same. But ironic, Scorpios are known to be the most sexual sign of the zodiac, which is true, but it's very misunderstood because they're not like people that would just have sex with anyone, anytime, anywhere. Usually they do need an emotional connection and they are highly loyal. And so a Scorpio will not betray you unless they're betrayed. And so they're the wild cards because it's like a hit or miss. But, you know, if a Scorpio is loyal to you and you're a good person and you're loyal to them, they will kill for you. Like they will love you forever. They will do anything for you. They are one of the most loyal signs you can have on your side. And they will love you without judgment. You can tell them your deepest sexual secrets, your deepest sexual shames, your deepest sexual traumas, and they will hold all of it for you. So they're badasses in the bedroom. Yeah, and of course, they're the kinkiest. So then Sagittarius, Venus, and Sag Mars, they're kind of similar to like the air signs we've talked about. They're a little sexually promiscuous, or they could be polyamorous. They're kind of all over the place. Sagittarius is usually the sign of the bachelor or the bachelorette, which are usually like they like to stay single. They need excessive freedom, and sometimes that applies to their sex life. And so that could mean they don't like really being restricted or tied down sexually, literally maybe, and metaphorically. They usually don't love monogamy, or they might have a hard time staying faithful in relationships, unless they have other planets to ground it in. Like if you have your Venus and Sag, but your Mars isn't something super, super committed, like Taurus or even Scorpio, then that adds that loyalty in. But if there's a lot of like flitting around signs and you have some Venus in Sag or Mars in Sag, it's a lot of freedom, and that can sometimes interfere with commitment or mess with someone's head. They might feel themselves conflicted, like I want to commit, but I want to be free, and then find themselves going back and forth. And also Sagittarius is all about travel. So they love vacation sex, or they might like exotic destinations for sex, or they might just want to have sex with their professor. It's all about studying as well. So they might have a teacher-student thing. With Mars in Capricorn, that's an exalted position as well. So sorry, when I said exalted before, I meant dignified. So Mars, that basically means it's in the sign that it rules. So like when Venus is in Taurus or Venus is in Libra, that's a sign it rules. Mars in Capricorn is exalted. That means that it's in the best place it can be. It's a sign of the boxer. It means it's a wonderful sexual energy sign, and it means it's a go-getter. They will absolutely pursue you. They will pursue you methodically with a plan, and they will get you, and they have goals. So Capricorns are ones that are the greatest achievers in the zodiac, and they will be very ambitious. So if you have somebody that is pursuing you that has a Mars in Capricorn, you will probably be dating them. So pretty sooner or later. And Venus in Capricorn can be a little tricky. You might be a gift love language. You might be somebody that you could be a good courtesan or, or prostitute or sex worker or OnlyFans, because Venus in Capricorn can be like mixing love and business. You could also have sex with your boss or authority figures. When Capricorn is there, they like authority figures, bosses. They might have a daddy thing. It could be like that energy or power play dynamics in sex. They're very faithful. Mars and Capricorn are very monogamous. Venus too, because they take their love super seriously. Aquarius, Venus, and Mars are free spirits. They are, again, maybe polyamorous or very unusual. They might go against society norms. They may have weird fetishes or fetishes that go against society's traditional views. They are kinky in ways. They might fall in love with and like having sex with all their friends. Or if you are their best friend, they might want to fall in love with you or have sex with you, because Aquarius is all about that. They might find themselves attracted to people who are involved in humanitarian pursuits or charities, or really find themselves like really wanting to have sex with that environmental petitionist on the side of the street because they love good causes. And they're very good people, but they are free-spirited. So they might, again, be polyamorous, but do it the right way where everybody knows everything and they're direct with the way they communicate. Or they may go against society views. Like that might be where they have unusual, unconventional pairings of people, where you see people who look like two totally opposite, like a goth with, a football player, and like mash them together. And like that is attractive for them. So they might go for like somebody that would normally be looked at as like, I don't want to use the word outcast, but like back in the 90s, the goths were like the ones that were the unusual, quirky ones, that kind of thing. So they might have that, or they might be interested in people who look very edgy or very different. Or they might find themselves finding themselves like visually themselves liking to look very edgy. So there is that. And then we have Pisces. So yes, Venus in Pisces is exalted. It's the best place you can have it. It's high romance, high romantic. Definitely, they believe in soulmate love. These are the ones that are going to be doing your astrology chart and finding out your past lives. They might even have it in a dream. They might reenact it. You could do like past life role play. That's fun. You could do all sorts of like high fantasy, high romance kind of sex. Pisces energies are not the most faithful because they make stupid mistakes and they do it by accident. And then they're like, oh, oops. And so Mars in Pisces is a little all over, and Venus in Pisces is a little all over. And so sometimes they might do it and then lie about it or hide it or not want to be forthcoming about it. So there may be a problem sometimes with like honesty or fidelity with that sign. But if you, there's like, they'll love you, they'll fall in love with you at first sight, probably like the first time you kiss. They will get their emotions very attached and very into it. They might be very emotionally sensitive during sex, but high romance, high creativity. They're the artists of the group. But yeah, musicians of the group. So they'll probably write you a sonnet about how your lovemaking session was, and it would be very beautiful. And they're very, very, very sensual. So they would very much almost feel like they have a psychic connection with you, where they tune into your needs. They want to become your fantasy. So that's cool. So it's kind of like a quick little cheat sheet of all the Venuses and Marses.
I love it. Thank you.
Very interesting.
Where's my Mars again?
Your Mars is in Capricorn.
Ah, okay.
Monogamous lover, very serious about sex.
That makes sense. Wait, that's the one that dates bosses, right? Because there's been a lot of that. There's been a lot of that.
Get it.
Back in the day.
Now, I'm curious, what advice do you give to, let's say, people are in a couple and they kind of get into this stuff and discover it, and they run their charts and they're like, ugh, there's no diagonal or right angle stuff, like you said.
That is
I forget the terminology, but they're just looking at it and they're like, what do we do now? Because the charts say that we're not sexually compatible. So what advice would you give?
And that happens so often, actually. That is like such a good point. Because, have you ever fallen in love with somebody and you love them, but you just don't feel that spark with them? And that's really tough. That's usually when people go to therapy, which I always highly shout out to therapy, because I'm biased and I love it. But usually that's where people go to therapy, because if you don't have sexual chemistry in your chart, if you're not sexually attracted to your partner, but you love them or you have a connection with them and you're trying to make it work, that is a really, really hard thing. Because without that, then people can, cheat on your partner. They're like, oh, I don't want to leave my spouse. They're so good to me, but we never really had that chemistry. And I just really have attraction with you. So sometimes that's when they start going outside the relationship, or they need to try to work on connecting with somebody on that level to work through it. And that's when they have to get really creative, because it's hard because the link isn't there just naturally. They can't just fall back on oh, my hormones and you're a hot person. So that's a little bit trickier. It's a little trickier. And that's kind of where really good communication comes into play. And that's where you can kind of try to figure out what are your person's interests and can you try them? And that's hard, because sometimes that's also where people have different fetishes or different sexual preferences or kinks than their partner. And then again, that's really, really hard when they're just not a sexual match. That might be a conversation of, if we don't want to break up the relationship, do we want to try polyamory? How do we want to have boundaries in the relationship so our needs are met? Because it's hard. Sometimes people shut off their sexual desires for decades and just live with it. Or life circumstances trap them and they feel like they can't leave. If two people are oh, I have a kid together and we aren't really a match anymore, but I need to stay. And a lot of people stay out of obligation, feeling like they're trapped when really they have so many choices. So it's a tough thing to not have that instant chemistry.
Yeah. It kind of makes me want to make sure I run charts for everything now.
Oh, yeah, girl. Yeah.
First big question. What time of day were you born and where?
Yes, exactly.
Let
me run the powder and let me run this. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I look back through my long relationships and I never had that issue until the last one. And I mean, it's hard. So you try and, make a square work in a triangle and it just doesn't work. And then it's funny because through hookups or whatnot since then, or the one, let's be real, there really wasn't any except for like one. And it was the worst ever. The worst ever. And I'm like, oh God, like this is, ugh. So it's, I mean, this makes sense. And then I have another friend of mine, this is just like so funny, and who is going through also a breakup and Aquarius, and has a lot of these, I've known him for years, has a lot of these really just a lot fantasies, and a lot of people or a lot of women can't handle his, like what he wants sexually. So he's telling me all this, and I guess this is the Scorpio side, as you were saying, like, tell me it all. Like, I'm good, I'll hold space, like all good. And he's like, yeah, literally, like it's hard for him to connect with someone on that level of what he's desiring. And then he's like shunning himself and getting down on himself. And I'm like, well, don't get down on yourself. Like, explore, be you, do you and what you need for it. And eventually you'll find that partner. But like, he needs to run the pattern and like, you know, find what works for that. But this makes such sense, you know, for nowadays, if you're into it, like for me, for sure, anyone I'm going to get involved with, even if it's just like a fun hookup, I'm not going to waste my time for like another bad night in bed with someone. Like, no, need more than that,
you know? Commit yourself. Yeah. You don't want to commit yourself to someone you have no chemistry with for like decades.
Yeah.
You know, we're not in the 1950s. We can have credit cards now. We can buy houses, you know?
How about, has anyone attempted to make a dating app that's really based on this, where instead of reading profiles and swiping, you know,
there you go.
I think that would be curious. You put in your place of birth, and it doesn't have to be displayed to the other person, right? Your time of birth, place of birth, date of birth is kind of stored internally, and then the algorithm runs exactly what you did for us, and then says, hey, here's some matches for you based on the sexual chemistry, and then you can kind of look through and see, okay, well, you know, visually I'm attracted to this person, I read their profile, I might be interested. I think that'd be fascinating if somebody tried that.
That would be awesome.
Oh, like, yeah, that'd be amazing. Almost, but you know, it's so interesting, like doing astrology in depth like this. You know, I'll notice, like, I'll see a chart and I'll see the characteristics, but then I'll already kind of intuitively know it going in, because, you know, if you swipe on a dating app, you know if you're attracted to someone, kind of. You know, you're like, oh, they're kind of cute enough, or oh, well, yeah, sure. And then someone, you're like, oh, that's hot. Yes, absolutely. And so you can kind of do it frontwards or backwards, where you can see somebody and then you look at their chart and you're like, oh, yeah, I saw that. Or you can look at a chart and then you meet that person in person, and that would confirm it for you that way.
I need to see first. Kind of like, I need to see the person.
There's a big part of you, I think, that will know.
Gotta make sure the pictures are real.
For me, it's like more of a physical. Well, I mean, whatever. It's the physical attraction. Obviously, is huge, and then I'm like, oh, okay. Well, then let's see what they're about. Just like on an app, you're like, okay, this person looks attractive. Let me look at the other photos to make sure, like, it's not just the angle or like 10 years ago or whatever. And then you kind of scroll through, and you're like, okay. And then I'll look at their bio of like, are they smart? Can they speak? What do they do? And I will look at your job 100%. And if you don't have one listed or it's something lame, then I'm like, oh, no, you know. And then if I'm still interested, then I would want to look at your chart. Otherwise, you know. So maybe like Match needs to add this, or the pattern needs to add this, and maybe you need to approach them, either of you. Like, that would be kind of cool.
It'd be interesting. I feel like that could be, even if it's an existing app, could be such a differentiating feature. Like, hey, we have this, and I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, I feel before, I don't think it had as much popularity. People weren't as aware of it.
Yeah.
But now more people from sort of like more everyday life that are not necessarily spiritual or into astrology are paying attention to it, kind of like my own journey. And I would be 100% interested in that. So there you go, business idea for somebody.
Yeah.
Now, in astrology, it kind of has patterns throughout your life as well that you go through and sort of experience. It sounds like that could also apply to relationships. So is there a way that you can, let's say you have initial compatibility with someone, can you look at these charts and sort of chart a course for your relationship? Because I've experienced that. I'm sure other people have as well, and perhaps in reverse. But you have this huge romantic spark, and then it sort of fizzles out. But then on the other hand, people have also experienced where initially there's, you know, a little bit of a connection, and it grows into this deep love. And I'm just curious, how much can these charts inform you on the progression of a relationship over the months, years, and so on?
Good question.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because the funny thing is, like, sex and love are different. and ideally it's great when they're kind of merged together or when they're the same. But when you look at what somebody is sexually compatible, it doesn't necessarily mean you guys are going to fall in love or that there's like a romantic compatibility there or even a compatibility between personalities. So that can be a little bit tricky. But when it comes to the progression of a relationship, for me, I always choose to look at something called the progressed moon. So you can progress a chart. So basically, like the charts that we have up right now, this is your chart that when you were born, it stays fixed, it doesn't change. But things that do change are, today we're in 2024, we're not in 1985 anymore. And so the planets will transit or that will go around your astrology chart and we'll see like today, for instance, we have a new moon eclipse. And so we have the new moon and the moon is transiting Edgar in that way and it's squaring his sun sign. And so the planets of 2024 are now aspecting your birth charts. And that's what a transit is. For progression is basically where, and it's kind of like a weird astrology kind of method, but it's like you take the ephemeris, which is like an almanac, which basically lists all of your planets up here and then the degrees and zodiac signs down there. And they list it like an almanac is like, oh, today the sun rose at 7 and then tomorrow it rises at 7:05. So there's like a progression in an ephemeris as the days go on. And so a progressed chart is basically when you go down an ephemeris and you count each day down of the ephemeris for each year of your life. So basically that would progress you to your current age. So if you're 40 years old, you count down 40 little lines in the ephemeris and then you'll see like where the moon is. Now we have software for it. So you can just put your stuff in the software. So like for you, Edgar, I'll bring you up. So what this is and what this does is it tells you your progressed moon, which will tell you where are you at psychologically and emotionally in your life. Are you in a place where you would want to have a more serious, committed relationship? And when you look at the progressed moon, so you go down here, you go second, in this case, in this software, it's called secondary progression. Yeah. And then you go to now, so it's today. And it will shift to see how your chart changed.
Right.
So it shifts and you want to look at the moon. You want to see, is your moon in a cardinal sign? Now, cardinal signs is a marriage moon. This is like you're going to meet a marriage partner. At this time, it's about a 30-month window of time because it stays 30 degrees per sign. So it's 31 degree per month. So it's 30 months of time. And you want to see in this 30-month window, are you in a marriage moon? Are you going to meet partners that are committed while you're also mentally ready? And you're ready and to be in a committed relationship, even if you have some nerves, or self-doubts, like you'll be basically ready. Or these
already did that
relationships
once.
that come into your life, you'll be sticking around. And so if it's in a different moon, like Gemini moon or Sag moon, you're not really going to be in a marriage moon space. You're not going to be in like a serious space. But you can see if you look at your moon progressed and their progressed moon, how your relationship can progress. So for you, you actually are. So Edgar, your progressed marriage moon is in Aries. So you are in a cardinal sign. And the cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. These are marriage moons. Scorpio and Taurus aren't marriage moons, but they're still like super dedicated and committed. So that's good. But again, like a Pisces or an Aquarius or a Gemini or that type of thing, Sag, those aren't really committed. They're not going to really have people that will like stick around right now. But your marriage moon is in Aries. It's 6 degrees. So that means for the last 6 months, you've been in a headspace where you've been either more ready than you had been before, where you were more in like a fantasy mindset when your moon was in Pisces. But 6 months ago, your moon moved into Aries. And as the months go by, you'll get more and more and more ready as you get deeper and deeper into this Aries moon. And so it's a marriage moon. So when you meet people romantically or connect with them, now you're more ready than you were before. And you'll be there for 24 more months. So you have 2 more years of this cycle. Then it moves into Taurus, which is also super, very committed. So then you'll have another 30-month cycle of being very, very, very committed. And then it moves into Gemini. So then you can do with it like you want. But basically, you're in a very long window of time for years of now you're going to be meeting the romantic partners that are more serious. Or if you were in, let's say, a pre-existing relationship, you would be able to now deepen it into a more serious commitment. So like, for instance, when I first met one of my exes, his moon was in Virgo and it was cold. He wasn't emotionally, attaching to me. He was like very kind of checked out. And for the first year, it was actually pretty rejecting for me because he wouldn't emotionally connect. But when my marriage moon and his moved into Libra, then he proposed. And that was about 4 years in. And so things can change and they can progress and they can deepen. So sometimes people who are very not available can then become available. Or sometimes people who are very, very committed can sometimes leave partnerships. So your marriage moon is in Aries, which is a very beautiful marriage moon. And Bridgetta, yours progress.
Yeah, there's like nothing happening in my life.
No.
So
You're like, it sucks. No, let's see.
Let's see.
In
When is something actually going to happen?
You're a marriage moon. No, you're in a marriage moon. You're in I'm a very committed, I'm a wifey. So you're in wifey mode. It's great. So I love this for you guys.
Where's mine?
So you'll be there for the next 15 months. And then it progresses into Leo for 30 months, which is great. So then it's going to be all very much like you're just going to do what you want. But it's also a very loyal, very committed. Leos have two sides. They can either be selfish and do whatever they want, screw the consequences, or they will die for you. So they will be the most loyal king in the world.
Wait, so that's where
one extreme or the other.
I'm at? Is that
that's where you'll be in 15
Soon.
months.
And
But right now, you're in wifey mode.
So funny. Wifey mode with myself, I guess.
Well, the people that you'll be meeting are more serious now than you would have been used to.
Oh, well, that's
good news.
because-
Yeah, right? That makes sense.
But the eclipse has brought up, like, I mean, name the people
Well, the eclipse
from the
sucked for you guys
past.
both.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, what is
Yeah.
this? Just crazy.
Yeah, no, the eclipse is hard for both of your signs, actually.
Okay, so if you were to look at this, like,
Mhm.
when are they coming in?
Oh, now.
When are you going to
like-
meet the guy?
Yeah,
specifically?
come on, because this has just
Bring
been
it
a
to
little
Matthew.
ridiculous.
We'd
guys,
like a
I'll give you a
date
number.
and a
Sure.
time, please.
Date and time.
Specifically.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd
Be
be great.
specific.
So that you're
Because-
ready at that time.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's funny because there are a few people that I don't know, it's funny. I'll meet someone, like I met this one guy on the beach and I was like, I think I told you about this. And I was like, oh my God, he like stepped out of muscle and fitness, like, damn. And I totally, literally, I was sitting on the beach and I watched him walk by. And then I was like, I'm going to go in the water right now. And so I went in the water right in front of him in my bikini and just like shredded in, put my hair in the water, like the Brooke Shields move, flipped it out, like waited for him. He stopped right in front of me. And then we talked for like 2 hours. And then he has
Love
been
it.
messaging, but I've just kind of gone, oh God, it's a Virgo. I can't do that again. Like, no. So, and he reached out again. He's been reaching out, like it's been a couple weeks. And I'm like,
So you should just casually slide in like, hey, what time of day were you born?
I should do that.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because the sign is a sign, right? But then you have to run this whole chart. And maybe
Right.
it's going to give you some positives out of that.
That's true.
So
That's very true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
now in the progressions, you only look at the moon. You don't look at the Mars and Venus signs because that.
I only look at the moons. I know a lot of astrologers that go deeper into it, but for me, I feel like the moon just tells me everything I need to know. I look at other stuff it's like astrology. I kind of look at whatever answers a question at the time. And I found that the
Right.
moon really, it's like what you're emotionally ready for. And it happens to be what the universe throws at you too, is serious people. So yeah, that's what I look at.
Well, that's cool versus little boy toys that have just been
Yeah.
showing up. I'm like, come
Yeah.
on. Cool.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, like oh gosh, when your progressed moon is in Gemini, you have such a roster, and even if it's not normally in your character, it's like it's like an exception to your rule. It's like the girls that are like, I never do this. It's usually because their moon progressed into Gemini.
How often have you heard that? I never do this.
Well, now I know there's a good reason for that. You know, it's a good excuse. Like, oh, you must be in that.
Yeah.
Totally get it. No worries.
So I'm wondering too, like I want to go back through my 20s and I'm like, oh, there was a portion in time where I had my whole list of that was a fun time. I bet my moon was there. Interesting. All right. Cool. Okay. Oh, we have to wrap up. I didn't even realize. This has been so fun though.
Absolutely. So just in closing,
no.
kind of what's the best way for people to do these charts? Do they contact you? Do they look up this software? Like if somebody's sitting at home and they're like, oh man, this is fascinating. I want to run these charts with this person I just met. How would they do it? What's the first step?
Totally. So if you want to see, usually softwares and apps will do it for you and then just give you like the printout of it, which is great. Right. But if you want to look like in more depth and stuff, I would definitely recommend working with a person that can interpret it for you and can work with it for you. And even in the session and the reading, you can kind of like process all the stuff with them, and you'll come up with questions that like an app can't really answer. But definitely like astro.com or Cafe Astrology or the, you know, the CoStar app and stuff, they will do a lot of those compatibilities. If you would like my help, you can always reach out. My website is fairyastrology.com. You can find me there. I have a YouTube channel, Solaris Fairy Astrology and Tarot. So I have a ton of like love and relationship like card readings on there. So you can ask about your relationships. If you're curious about a person, it's usually more women that are interested about their guys, but you can, you know, we can have the one-off man wander in there from time to time, but usually it's for women. But feel free to check it out.
Yeah. Maybe this will inspire some guys to take a look at it, because it's certainly interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, exactly. Now that you know
scary dating world out there.
And you know what you're going to get in bed, at least. So maybe more guys should do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Love it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Solaris, for joining us. And we'll make sure we pin your website as well. And we will see everybody next time on Pillow Talk Unplugged. Don't forget to subscribe below.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.